My name is Rick Anderson. I'm 58 years old, and for most of my life, people have underestimated me. When I was younger, that used to eat at me. I'd lie awake at night replaying conversations, thinking about what I should have said, how I should have proved them wrong. Back then, I thought respect was something you had to demand loudly, something you had to fight for in every room you walked into. But time has a way of teaching you lessons you don't expect. What I eventually realized is this. When people think you're small, when they believe you have nothing to offer, they stop pretending, they drop the mask. And in that moment, they show you exactly who they are. That kind of truth is rare. And if you're patient enough, it becomes more powerful than anything money or status could ever give you. The night everything changed started with a simple phone call from my daughter, Jennifer. It was a Wednesday evening, and I was in my garage working on an old engine, hands covered in grease, radio humming quietly in the background. When I picked up, I could tell immediately something was off. Her voice was too careful, too measured, like she had practiced every word before saying it. She told me Tony wanted me to come over for dinner on Friday night. Just a family dinner, she said, adding quickly that his parents would be there too. That alone was enough to make my stomach tighten. Tony's parents had never treated me like family. The previous Christmas, his mother Helen had actually moved my place setting out of the dining room and into the kitchen, saying the dining room was for family only. I remember sitting there alone with my plate, hearing laughter from the other room, realizing exactly where I stood in their world. So when Jennifer told me they suddenly wanted a proper family dinner, I didn't feel honored. I felt suspicious. It didn't feel like an invitation. It felt like a setup. But when your daughter asks you to show up, you show up. Even when every instinct tells you it's going to hurt. At the same time, there was something else on my mind. For months I had been hearing things through old contacts. Construction is a small world, and if you've been in it long enough, information finds its way to you. Tony had been pushing hard on a riverfront development project, the kind of deal that could define a career or destroy it. Big promises, big investors, big risks. But there was one problem holding everything back. He needed a specific piece of land for access, and the owner refused to sell. I had heard how he talked about that owner in meetings, called him stubborn, called him outdated, even called him an old fool who didn't understand opportunity. What Tony didn't know was that the land he was so desperate to acquire, the one standing between him and success, belonged to me. My house on Maple Street sat right where he wanted to build his grand entrance. It wasn't much to look at. Small, a little worn down, nothing like the polished image he was trying to present to investors. But that house was mine. Every nail, every repair, every inch of it carried memories. I had lived there for decades, fixed it with my own hands, built a life inside those walls. To Tony, it was just an obstacle. To me, it was everything. What made the situation even more ironic was something no one in that family knew. 25 years earlier, long before Tony ever stepped into a leadership role, his father Charles had been on the verge of losing everything. His construction company was collapsing under the weight of bad decisions, gambling debts, and unpaid obligations. Back then, I was just a 33-year-old contractor who had spent years saving every dollar I could. I didn't come from wealth. I built everything slowly, carefully, one job at a time. When I saw Charles's company falling apart, I saw an opportunity others ignored. I took every cent I had and bought 51% of that business. It was the biggest risk of my life. At the time, it felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff with no guarantee I wouldn't fall. But I believed in what the company could become if it was run properly. And over the years, that belief paid off. The company grew, expanded, and eventually became the powerhouse Tony now ran as CEO. Today, my stake was worth tens of millions, but I had kept that fact hidden. Even Jennifer didn't know. My late wife and I had made that decision together. We didn't want our daughter growing up relying on money she hadn't earned. We wanted her to build her own path, to understand the value of hard work. Looking back, maybe we were too successful in teaching that lesson, because she ended up marrying a man who saw her father as nothing more than a burden. Friday night came, and the air had that quiet chill that settles in before winter fully arrives. I cleaned up, put on my best shirt, and drove my old pickup to Tony's mansion. The place was exactly what you'd expect. Huge, modern, cold in a way that had nothing to do with temperature. White marble floors, glass walls, everything designed to impress. It wasn't just a home, it was a statement, a declaration of success. Tony opened the door wearing a suit that probably cost more than my truck. He didn't smile. He didn't greet me warmly. He just stepped aside and said, "Rick, Come in." Inside, the dining room was set up like a boardroom. Everything was precise, controlled, almost staged. His parents were already seated, watching me like I was part of some performance. Jennifer sat there too, quiet, avoiding my eyes. That was when I knew for sure. This wasn't just dinner. Dinner was tense, filled with forced conversation and subtle jabs. Helen made comments about aging and knowing your place. Charles spoke like he was still a powerful figure, ignoring the reality of how his company had been saved. Tony kept steering everything toward finances, responsibility, long-term planning. I didn't argue. I didn't push back. I just listened. Because when people believe they have control, they reveal everything. After the main course, Tony reached under the table and pulled out a thick folder. He slid it toward me like he was finalizing a business deal. His tone changed, becoming more authoritative, more rehearsed. He said they needed to talk about my future. When I opened the folder, I saw nursing home brochures on top, followed by legal documents, power of attorney forms, property transfers, guardianship applications. It was all planned. Every detail thought out. Tony explained that my house had become a burden, that they had been supporting me financially and couldn't continue doing so. It was a lie, but I let him keep talking. Charles added that selling the property would benefit everyone. Tony explained how important the land was for the company's future. Helen smiled and told me how comfortable I'd be in a place like Sunset Manor. Comfortable, like I was something to be stored away. When I asked what would happen if I refused, their tone shifted. Charles talked about legal options. Tony said they could have me declared mentally unfit, that they would take control of my assets for my own safety. Jennifer finally spoke, her voice trembling, saying it was for the best, that they needed this for their future. That moment hurt more than anything else. Not the threats, not the manipulation, but hearing my own daughter justify it. Tony placed a gold pen next to the papers and told me to sign. I looked at all four of them, so confident, so sure they had already won. Then I reached into my jacket, pulled out my phone, and calmly told them there was something they should know first. I called my lawyer, put it on speaker, and instructed him to activate a clause in the shareholder agreement, freeze all company assets, and prepare termination papers for the CEO. The silence that followed was absolute. When my lawyer responded, "Yes, Mr. Anderson," everything changed. I stood up and told them the truth, that I owned 51% of the company, that everything they had existed because of me. Tony's face went pale as the realization hit him. The man he had been trying to destroy was the man who controlled his entire world. I told him there would be a board meeting Monday morning and that he should bring a resignation letter. Monday came, and the outcome was inevitable. In a room full of board members, with evidence laid out clearly, the vote was unanimous. Tony was removed as CEO. The man who had tried to take everything from me fell apart completely, begging for another chance. But it was too late. I told him I wasn't destroying his life. I was saving my daughter from it. Security escorted him out, and just like that, everything he had was gone. In the months that followed, I thought a lot about what had happened, about the choices we make, about the lessons we pass on, about what truly matters. And I realized something I wish I had understood sooner. The greatest thing you can give your children isn't money. It isn't comfort or security. It's the ability to see clearly, to recognize character, to understand who people really are when they think no one important is watching. Because that's when the truth comes out, and once you've seen it, you can't ignore it. Sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't taking something away. It's revealing the truth so completely that the other person has no choice but to face who they really are.